welcome to the stream. I'm Brandy, and today we're breaking down the aquascaping contest at the Aquatic Expo, or at least the last bits of it, and also going to get a little bit into ReefStock Denver if we have time. With me is our expert guest, Shelby.
Hey, super excited to talk about these tanks, kind of wrap up the rest of the Aquatic Expo. These were all incredible tanks, and I enjoyed every single one of them. That's why we had to make sure we got every single one of them in here and talk about them.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to go over the 3 standout aquascapes. That is the last ones. Actually, one of my favorite ones is in this group. We're going to talk about what they did well, what they could have been improved upon to place higher. A lot of times placing higher is not a matter of doing better, but not making mistakes. And I think we see that with some of these. Whether you're a seasoned aquascaper or just getting started, there's a lot to learn from these entries. And of course, we'd love to hear from you in the chat. Let us know your thoughts on these tanks as we go. All right, so our first tank I've already got pulled up for us, Shelby. Whose is this?
This is Chris Fawcett's. A Fassett. I'm not sure how to pronounce it exactly, so
Me either.
Hopefully close enough.
All right, so tell us about it.
This one was really cool. I really love that centerpiece, like focal point. Kind of looks like a dragon to me, and I'm like in love with little things like that. So I really enjoyed this. I think I can see their concept of what they were trying to do with like the wood warping around each other and kind of working together. It's absolutely beautiful. There's nothing wrong with this tank. But when you get into a judging standpoint, and what the judges are looking for is that there's too much empty space. You know how so second place had a big, what's that called? I'm trying to think of.
Focal point?
No, the empty space in a tank.
Negative space.
Negative space, thank you. Blanking this morning.
That's why we're both of us talking. I couldn't do this without you.
So the negative space could be used in a good way and a bad way. There is too much negative space in this tank. So this is like an example of where you don't want the negative space, which is above. So you could do like a structure and have negative space around it like it's an island. But you would want to just fill this up a little bit more. So just like a few more pieces of wood on both sides would have filled this up and would have gave it that extra little push that it needed. Overall planting's really great. They have crypt carver on the front. It's gorgeous. They got some nice longer ones in the back left that makes it look deeper. So like the depth is there. I would just say there was just more empty room. It is a little cloudy, which is, to be expected when you use wood in an aquascaping contest.
Is that something the judges look at? Is clarity of water a component?
Yeah.
It is?
Sometimes, yeah. Most of the time, judges, especially like in a dominant woodscape, they try to overlook that. But if you're right next to someone that also has a bunch of wood in their tank and they got it clear and it looks really good because they just water changed it and knew what to do, it could really bring your score down because it's hard to see. They can't see all your little detail work that you're doing to accentuate and make it better.
So it's not necessarily that they take you off, but they can't see to actually give you points.
Yeah, so it just makes it harder for the judges to get your overall impression for it. So that is one thing you just want to really make sure. If you can wash the wood outside, it gives some of that dirt and grime off of it. Whatever you can do to prevent these things. Add a bag of purge into your tank.
Okay.
Or an extra filter would help get this cleared up by the night. When I do woodscapes and we've done them at shows, we put like a few filters on the tank. Sometimes that's not accessible to you. So when you're going into an aquascaping, try to bring like a bag of purge in, which is pretty easy to shove in your, travel to go, or like a smaller filter, anything like that. There's carbon that could help pull that out a little bit better. So that's just a small little tidbit you could do to improve
3 things
water.
you could do if you're using, maybe 4 things. Rinse the wood first.
Yep.
Have a second filter.
Mm-hmm.
Include some type of media, maybe Purigen, carbon, maybe both. So that could be 3 or 4. And water changes.
Yeah, that would help improve the water quality and make this tank stand out a little bit more. It really has a good focal point, so I don't see anything wrong with that. Like, it is drawing my eye through that piece that looks like that dragon, or maybe like an ostrich or
A
something.
bird or
It's cool.
something,
A
yeah.
vulture. It's really cool to me.
Yeah.
But it's definitely drawing my eye, and then they put smaller plants behind it, so they got a good focal point. I
So
maybe
one
would
thing
have
that
added.
stands out to me with this focal point, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong, I feel like it would have been more immediately impactful if it had been shifted onto that grid a little. So right now
Yeah.
it's almost like dead center in the middle of the tank. And we talked about that grid where it's a 3x3 grid, and you want to try and make your focal points hit on the intersecting grid lines where you split it in perfect thirds. And
Yeah.
I feel like if that was shifted a bit, it would have looked more like just the way that our eyes are drawn to things. That would have drawn the judges in more. Looks like
Yeah.
a turkey. Gobble
That's
gobble.
funny. You're right. So like, if they would have built up the left side and made bigger pieces, then it would draw you that way, and it wouldn't be so necessarily centered. I think it's because there's not much to go on. That's why it kind of brings it more centered. And it's hard with the glare. There's actually a hole in that bottom left. If they would have made
Oh.
like a little path going through that way, would
To
have
draw your attention.
so much more. And it like
Yeah.
doesn't need to be too defined. I mean, little tiny paths can make it such a world of difference in
What
some
would they make
tanks
the
like
path
this.
with? Like just a different substrate or
Different
with
sand.
plants?
He could, so that one is it's either the midnight pearl or the gold pearl. It's hard to tell size difference in pictures.
Yeah.
But it could have used the prairie sand. That makes it look like it's people are traveling through it, just like in nature when someone creates their own little path. Did I freeze? Okay, we're good.
You freeze on my screen, but you didn't freeze on the stream.
Oh, okay, good. But overall, still really impactful to me. Just could have used a couple more pieces where it would have just brought it up a little bit better. I still enjoy this tank a lot.
Yeah, I think all these tanks were really gorgeous. And I think that, like, this is why we like doing aquascaping competitions, is we learn from each other, and everybody has a different eye for it and different suggestions. And I think that's why we're doing the live stream, too, is just teach people about aquascaping techniques.
Yeah, just small little things like you're not thinking of. Like, I've gone to multiple contests and I've had things like this happen where I'm like, what am I going to do? So, like, if we can give any advice to, like, prepare for something like that, it's, I hope I'm helping in some sort of way for someone to do a little bit better in the next contest.
Yeah. I think something also that stands out with, wait, which, did he use any rocks in this?
I believe there might be a little, yeah, there's like some stones on the right.
Is that
Looks like
glitter
the glitter
rock?
stones. Yeah. But he didn't use them to accentuate. It looks like he more used them as like to prop things up to get the depth he needed and more product. So that might have been like a hindering part, is where he didn't have enough wood and would have liked to have more wood for this. Someone might have had it for their scape, or it might have been hidden and it couldn't find it. That's why when you go into an aquascaping contest, you might have to switch up what you're doing if there's not too much of what you need. Because sometimes you need to fill the tank. So if you can't fill it with necessarily, please just scrap it, start over. Some people go in with such a plan that they can't get their head wrapped around it. So you have to be able to work around that idea. Or work with materials like we've done. You hid stones underneath to make it even bigger, and then just kind of like put a little tiny piece in the front. So it looks like it's still a gigantic piece, but it's actually mainly stones, and then like one piece is hiding all the stones.
Yeah, so if you're using something to prop it up, do a better job of like disguising that that's what it's doing. So
plants are like a big thing to plug in. And a lot of people don't think about it because they're looking at the main structure and they're not going, oh, I can put moss here and hide this little gap or this gap. So it's something like that you got to think of in the long run, that I want this to be up here, let me get it up here and then I'll hide it. So that's what I kind of do is I work with some of the bigger pieces I'll put up, and then I'll sit there and I'll look back and I'm like, okay, well, if I do this, this, and this, I can cover it with this, this, and this. So
it kind of reminds me of just like finishing out a project, right? Like in a house, a room can be done, but you add molding to it, and suddenly it's got another layer. Or if you've hung a TV on the wall, but you have a wire dangling down, doing something to disguise the wire, like wire stripping or something like that exists for a reason. Like same thing with this. It's like it's beautiful, but just the last little finishing components really takes it over the top. You want me to move on to the next one?
Yeah.
All right, who are we talking about next?
Chris Smith, I believe.
All right. Let me get his pulled up. So this was one of my favorite ones. Like I thought what he did was absolutely gorgeous, and I think I picked him as either my first or second favorite. We all went around secretly, the three of us, and just among ourselves picked out, me, Sadie, and Shelby picked out our top three, and this was one of my top three. I thought it was just absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, the thing that overall sold this tank is obviously the clarity of it. It's just crystal clean, and you can tell because like the Alpine's not dirty, the substrate's not dirty. I was surprised because I believe he has aqua earth in this, how clear this tank came, because usually any substrate like that buffers the pH usually is pretty dirty, and it's hard to get clear. So he knew, he has experience. I know he works with plants and he's worked with aquascaping, so you can clearly tell when someone knows what they're doing, how to get their water crystal clear. And he must have filled this extremely slow in order for this to look this crystal clear.
Yeah, I think he had like a bag or something in there too.
Yeah, that's the bag method. So like at most shows you can find some sort of plastic or a bag or something to put down, and you just lay it down and then you have the water trickle. It's so that the water fills at the same rate and isn't just pounding on it, because that disturbs the substrate, and that's where you get the huge mess. You could use rocks as a deterrent too. Sometimes I use the side of the tank, but usually the corners get messed up still. Really depends on how heavy of a flow you have. It's hard to achieve sometimes, especially with like only having one pump, no valve on it, and it's coming out 100 miles an hour, and you're like, oh, what am I gonna do? But the bag method has been like the best. A rag is also really good. Those are usually found at some of these events. Like you can go around to some of the booths, some people have rags, and I rubber band it to the end, and it like comes out a lot slower. So there's a lot of different ways.
Everybody had a different technique at ReefStock also, which we'll talk about later, but Hip covered his entire scape with paper towels. And Dennis did something with like a plastic cup where he had like poked holes in it so that it almost made like a
sprinkler.
Yeah. So I took some photos of him doing that because I was like, ooh, what are you doing here? So
I'm one to go off the rocks because it's gonna happen anyways, and I just natural filling of the tanks just goes slower. So everyone has their different methods. There's so many. Actually, that would be fun to do like a video. There's probably like 40 plus ways that you could achieve this look.
Yeah, we should do that. Let's put that on our to-do list. So this clear look really was like impactful and drew the eye, right?
Oh yeah, it was a showstopper for sure. Like, and I would say that this would have placed really well. It just didn't take up the tank. There was just too many other ones that took up so much of the tank and still was crystal clear. But it was really impactful. I'm surprised that this didn't win People's Choice because like most people stopped and stared at it. It was just aesthetically pleasing, that stark white in that tank.
You know what really caught me, and I knew what it was because John Penny has pointed this out to me before, and I would not have been able to explain it. But all the rocks, like the lines on the rocks kind of follow each other. Yeah. So they all go, and then something you've said before is the reflections on the side. Like
Yeah.
Like his reflections make it feel like this is continuing on. So he really built on, like, he paid attention to placement of the rock. He just didn't randomly put them in a pile. But
Right.
also, like, that reflection is just incredible.
Yeah, it was like one of the top tier to me, and I feel like it should have placed higher too. It's just there's so much negative space, but it's so good for schooling fish compared to some of the other aquascapes where like I don't to me an angelfish would look pretty in here. He did choose neons, which really stood out against this. Like all
Yeah.
those bright, it brought out that really bright color to it that it's like hard to recreate something so bright in a tank. Usually it's so dark and it's hard to catch that light, but all of these rocks caught that light and that substrate is really white and it just pops really well. So like
the green plants in there, just like
yeah.
everything about it is, it's like a bunch of contrast, but in a way that's pleasing together. It's not jarringly contrasting.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Oh yeah. No, it was really aesthetically pleasing. There was nothing wrong with this tank. Like I would see so many people have this in their home and how easy it is to maintain. So like if there's different that's the worst thing about aquascaping contests is like there's so many good tanks that are just like, wow, that's really good. It's impactful. There's nothing wrong with it. But in aquascaping, it fell short, and I'm not really sure. I wish I had his judges' notes to see where they were like, you could have done more, and where this is really nice, and I could see it grown out in the future. I can see that there's going to be taller plants in the background. Mid-ground's going to have some nice stems too, and then the front's nice and short plants. So this will grow out so beautifully and be like a really nice planted tank that you would want in your home. There's nothing wrong with this. I think the other ones just created such more of an impact with using all of the canvas.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's where this one fell short. It's just you used quarter of the canvas. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous, but it's an unfinished piece. And that's probably what
we've talked about this before, that these tanks were so tall that it was could be a bit of a problem for someone who's aquascaping if they walk into a tall tank like this and they aren't prepared to go height in it, because the judges expect you to use the entire space.
Yeah.
You got to aquascape the tank you're given. I love that Joe kind of went outside the box with the sizing with this. I hope he does that again. It gives everybody a chance to maybe puts people on more even playing fields, right? Like, because they've never done this particular footprint before.
It's a challenge. Like it would be pretty cool if he actually did like a shallow tank. You know how much more challenging that is to create depth in a shallow tank?
Yeah.
That would be pretty cool. And judge it going out of the tank. Like do things. I love unique contests like that. It gives it something different. It gives it that different feeling of like, I didn't see that tank over and over and over again. Like that can happen a lot. And it's like, that's the whole thing with aquascaping to me is like, let's create something new, create something different. That's what art's about. And if you're gonna call aquascaping a form of art, let's make it different.
I have to say that's something that always surprises me, is that all these people have the same items, and it's not like there's a bajillion different options. It's probably like, how many substrates typically, like 4 or 5, and
maybe
like
3 sometimes. There's not much,
and like 2 or 3 rock options and some wood, and it's like it always surprises me that people can come up with entirely different items.
And let me speaking of that, when you are in a contest, you do want to make sure that you stand out. That's the problem, is you could have like the best scape that looks so cool, but like 2 tanks down, the person used the same exact rock, the same exact wood, and sort of in the same layout, and it's gonna get lost because it's so similar. It's like it's hard. So you really want to stand out. So try to do something contrasting to the next one.
And this was very different, which surprises me that it didn't score higher, because I don't think anybody had anything anywhere near this in this particular contest. But like like you said, he just didn't fill the space.
Well, the problem I would say with him right next to Nick was Nick used the same stone and filled the
Oh,
tank.
that's right. And Nick got first place. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So like
this
the contrast
is Chris Smith.
there.
Chris Smith is number 5. Nick is what, number 6.
Yeah.
They have the exact same stones. I think Nick's was actually my number 1 favorite. And like you said, he did fill the tank. He had a space. He had some path. He had some direction to take your eye. So it's like almost if he had built out the other side of the rock so that there was a V shape or diverging, like just to make it more visually interesting with the rocks, may have even helped him place higher.
Even if the cool thing he could have done with this to improve it is like a piece of spiderwood in that corner that kind of draped through that rock.
Yeah.
So it kind of like would give it more depth, and it would look like a tree had fallen in and like gone with it, and it like flowed all together.
So what kind of style aquascape would you call this?
It's more of a triangular composition.
Is it like nature or?
Yeah, I would say nature a little bit. It's not too natural, but in a sense it is. They like when you use more wood is more nature style. So the more wood you use, the more nature. This wouldn't technically be a diorama because it's not big enough.
Okay, that's what I was thinking, like, because it almost feels like you're looking at the top of a mountain, and the fish could have been like birds or something flying over the top of the mountain, which is what is that a diorama style?
Yeah.
But it's just not big enough for that, right?
Right. I think that's what he was trying to achieve, is like a rock only style, which would do that. It was just, if it was a shallower tank, this would have probably been like, it would have been the top. It would have been in the top 3, no problem.
I mean, it's an absolutely gorgeous rock.
I would put it in my house, no problem.
Yeah. Right? I don't think there's any of these that I'd be like, nope, not that one.
Yeah.
All right, any last minute thoughts on Chris's?
Nope, I think he did a fantastic job.
All right, so both Chris's, so now we want to talk about Daniel's. Let me get that one pulled up. So this is Daniel Stewart. By the way, thank you so Shelby went and put these photos in for me and labeled all the names so I would know who they are. I'm like, thank you. All right, let me get this a little bit. Oh, I see. So in an aquascaping competition, he's got rocks sticks coming out the top. Is that something a judge is going to look at?
So normally they do not. Anything outside of the tank is not supposed to be judged, but I have been in contests where they have changed their idea of judging and then judged outside of the tank, but it wasn't for, okay, let's bring this perspective, is it wasn't for the top. It was for like individual prizes that were just like a ribbon. So it wasn't that they were necessarily giving extra points for the stuff coming out for
like a
the main contest. It was just an extra, like consolation prize kind of thing. I think that's what it's called. So they had like most unique or something, because they had done that. They had like come out of the tank and glued it to the side, put orchids on it. But it does still matter, I believe, when a judge is looking at it. If it looks bad, it's going to be a problem probably. I mean, necessarily they're not going to take points off, but it's still going to give you that overall. There's always the overall impression that is part of every aquascaping. So overall impression, if I'm staring at it and it's this weird piece coming out of your tank and it's distracting me, my overall impression is not going to be too great. But this one was awesome. So it wasn't an issue at all. But they're not supposed to judge what comes out of the water. Like if I had one that was just like cut off, like they're not going to go, well, that looks stupid. You know, like they understand I'm trying to get that out of the water so you don't see it.
Well, then, because of that, we're going to look at it without that there, and then we can bring it back if we want. So this is technically, if a judge is looking at this is what they're looking at, right? And we talked about this before, about how you want the wood to at least come to the water line, not to have it cut off early.
Yep.
But like if it came up and then cut off weird here, like right outside of the tank, a judge isn't going to look at that, right? Necessarily.
To me, this honestly would have been first place to me, like would have been my top choice if it wasn't for the fact that you can't see it.
Yeah.
I
know that when I went and looked, like all the water for most of them were pretty cloudy. And when I came back and told you my top 3, you were like, "What? Really?" Because you had looked much earlier than I had, and you went around and looked, and you're like, "Oh, that's because you can't see."
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh well." So
the detail work in this one was incredible.
Was it?
Yeah, it was so hard to see though. Like he literally had the spider wood and dragon stone together, and they were intertwining with each other. He had glued pieces that looked like it had grown through the stone.
Oh, that's so cool.
And you can't see it at all.
No, I didn't even know there was dragon stone in here.
Yeah, there's I have like a video that kind of goes into it a little bit more. But like the depth was incredible in this tank. I mean, it was so cool. And
you can tell that he covered the whole space too. There was like,
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, to me this was like no question the depth, the creativity, the to the fish in it, everything. The only downside was how dirty it was. And it was like you really like the judges when they judged, you literally couldn't see it. It was so bad. It was like you couldn't see all the detail. You had to get really close, which I hope that they judged that. But I know that they couldn't judge it high because of that.
Steven said cloudy water seems to be a recurring issue with these scape contests.
Yeah.
I think in particular this one, the Aquatic Expo, some of the Aquascapers, this was one of their first aquascaping competitions. Was any of it? Was it their actual first, or just like one of the first ones they had done? Like they maybe had done 1 or 2 before.
I think that, like, especially this guy, I don't think this was his first time aquascaping, but I think in a contest it was, which can come to a problem. So this guy, the problem with this one is he did not intend to come back and do a water change. That was the problem. They did do a water change. This is how I got this picture. This is a water change on this tank.
Oh, wow.
So this one would have had to use several water changes and would have had done really slow. I don't know who filled it, how they filled it. It's, this one also probably could have used some more filter bags or media to get it to clear up. There's also like a powder that could help get all the particles out of the water. It's called a flocculant. Several companies make them. That's what I would have thrown into this tank. There would have been several things, but if this is one of his first aquascaping contests, I don't think he's done that or knows about it. So it's really hard. Like I couldn't find him to do the water change because I was like, this needs to be water change. Someone else in the event actually did the water change. So I was very thankful for that. But it just sucks that all this hard work, and you don't really get to see it. I mean, it is so cool. And like, the center here, there's a path going back, and there's like 2 focal points. I mean, it's just such a cool tank.
Yeah, I think this really like knowing how to aquascape and knowing how to aquascape in a competitive setting are 2 very different things. And like having those skills combined is not common, right? Like it's hard. And I think having the knowledge to do those things, Steven suggested having all those things available for all the contestants, but I think that's part of it, is that contestants can bring with them what they need, like they can bring their tools and whatnot. And because a lot of times these competitions are being run on bare bones, like these tanks by themselves are like a $1,500 investment by the companies who's like giving each one. So like we're talking about tens of thousands of dollars already sunken in. And so there a lot of times there's not funds to think about all those things, and not everybody needs all those, like a flocculant or extra filters, and like because like if you know how to fill the tank slowly and use a bag, like you might not need any of that. So I think that that's like just having in your arsenal when you're starting to do these things, like be aware those are some things you might want to bring along with you.
Yeah, if you take it from a standpoint where aquascaping really, if you wanted to become professional or want to do something like that, you need to be able to do it on your own. You can't rely on a contest to provide materials of something that you need to handle. So if I say I was an aquascaper and I had a client that wants an aquascape of, you know, wood and all this stuff, and I go to their house and I did this and I filled it up and left it cloudy, like that would look bad on me. So you need to know as a professional, that's what, you know, you're trying to be in this, you know, contest. You've got to be prepared for things like this. And it's hard. It's not fun. it's something, it's a hurdle to get over, but these packets are like this small. They're easy to carry around. There's something that can help with anything, purging the same thing. I mean, it can be that's a local source at a local Petco, PetSmart, local fish store, anything. You
Everybody
can grab
has
purge
those things,
in.
yeah.
Yeah. Filter floss is cheap. It's easy to pack. It's something you just gotta be prepared for if you become an aquascaper, and that's what.
I mean, I think it's like bringing your glue, bringing your cigarette filters to glue the things together.
We use filter media sometimes to glue things. It's the funniest thing.
Yeah, so and like everybody has a different technique for it, and it's hard for a competition to provide a whole range of things when everybody has a different method for it. So
yeah,
I know I love the word flocculent. I love whenever I get that opportunity to throw that out there.
Yeah. I feel so sophisticated when I say it too. It's hilarious.
Agreed.
But I mean, there was there was nothing wrong with this tank besides the cloudiness, and
I love how you can see the blues of the neon tetras there. I'm sure this tank was absolutely gorgeous, and I hate that I didn't get the opportunity to see all the details in it because the water was cloudy.
And those fish were schooling in and out of those branches. It was so cool. The cories were going crazy at the bottom. They were just having a good old time.
So they were all happy, huh?
Yeah, they were all happy, and it looked great. It just wasn't clear enough, and I think that's what threw the judges off a lot. And there might have been some like little details, like on the right, you can kind of see that stone is pretty big, and there could have been like little issues here and there that would have been able to be seen a little bit better when it was clearer. But overall creativity should have gone to this person. Like it was the most creative tank I think I had seen,
and he did such a good job of filling the space. Because this was a hard tank footprint, and this one definitely hit the mark on that.
I enjoyed that one a lot.
We are at our 33-minute mark. I think next week we'll dig into the macroalgae aquascaping competition that Shelby was actually one of the competitors in. And that was really exciting. We were able to sponsor that and provide hardscape for that. That was out in Denver. And was the launch of our ReefStock. We were on a meeting earlier today, me, Shelby, and Sadie, and we were naming some of our new products that we're bringing on. Can't wait to show them to you guys. I'm like looking around, I'm like, should I pull any up? I'm like, not yet. So we have a bunch of new sands and gravels and rocks that we're bringing in, and Shelby said there's not a lot of competition or any competition for some of those, right?
Right. They're unique for sure. There's uniqueness to every single piece that's coming in, and so it's exciting for me, especially. Like I love the difference of colors and unique pieces that are so natural, but they have colors that kind of look unnatural. Those are the best.
It's gorgeous. I get to pick the names and decide how we're going to brand it and marketing it, so it's really exciting.
Whole different thing.
Well, Geek Boy, he said he wishes the Geek Bowie, I like mispronouncing things. I wish I had caught the algae competition. Well, we will be talking about that next week, and it will probably take us more than one day to talk about it. There was only 3 competitors, so me and Shelby have to decide how we want to split that up. But maybe we can get the other competitors on for different
That's what I was
times.
hoping.
Yeah, that'd be a lot of fun. Hey Vibes, you're late. We're done. You have to go back and watch it now. All right. Any parting comments, Shelby?
Nope. I just hope you guys tune in to us next week as we talk about the macroalgae, because that was definitely unique. It's something different. It gives you a different perspective, and hopefully can get you into some macroalgae too, because they're exciting. It was fun. It was such a joy to do the contest and learn about some of the products that we use too, because those can also translate into the cichlid world. Sulu USA shrimp. I know some of you watch my shrimping channel, so you know how much I love my Sulu USA shrimp. And this substrate that we used in the macroalgae can work for that, the reef rock and everything. So talk about the different uses of that in next week's.
All right, so don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, as Vibes is reminding everybody with all of his thumbs ups over there.
Thanks, Vibes.
Because we don't want you to miss us. And thanks to everybody for hanging out with us. We'll see you next